So first I'd like to talk to you about pharmaceutical sales. And, the bottom line is it all boils down to which profession you choose is all a matter of obviously what you're looking for out of your career, what you're looking for in your profession. Okay, both of them are respectable sales professions, but in reality, there's a big difference between the two. So first thing I'll cover is pharmaceutical sales. There's two main different types of pharmaceutical sales. There's a primary care, or shall we call office-based pharmaceutical sales, and there's an institutional pharmaceutical sales. One is calling on the physicians in their office and clinics. The other is calling on the physicians and the staff within the hospital. Most people get started in pharmaceutical sales in an office-based setting. And there are a lot of pros and cons to that, and comparing that between pharmaceutical sales versus medical sales. I would say overall, there's typically less pressure on a pharmaceutical sales rep than there is a medical sales rep. Overall, there is typically less money in a pharmaceutical sales position than there is in medical device sales. Typically, unless you work for a very large medical device organization like a Boston Scientific or a Johnson & Johnson, they're far less likely to do company cars on the medical device side of things than they are pharmaceutical sales positions. And so there's a lot of stereotypes. I want to cover this with pharmaceutical sales. Some of it is they call them the 10 to 2 reps. Another thing is glorified caterers. You may have heard those type of terms being used before. And the reason behind it is, and I think it's changed in the industry quite a bit. I actually have a background in pharmaceutical sales for only a couple years. I personally was not a big fan of pharmaceutical sales, and I'll explain that reasoning to you in a minute. But I then went from there into medical device sales and spent 11 of my 13 years in medical sales before I started recruiting in mainly medical device sales. I had in the past done some very specialized high-level pharmaceutical sales type of positions. But for the most part, I'd say 95% of my executive recruiting career was in the medical device field. So with regards to the stereotypes that go with pharmaceutical, the 10 to 2 rep, the pharmaceutical sales, because there's a lot less pressure and so forth, there was a misconception that those reps could start their day a little later and then typically end a little sooner. I think in today's day and age, in the technology age, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies use tracking tools to track whether or not you're getting signatures, and you have to log into your system, whatever type of system your company uses, and they keep a better idea of what you're doing on a daily basis. So the 10 to 2 reps probably don't exist as much anymore. The other thing is, like I said, the saying of being a glorified caterer. So in order to see most physicians in their practice, you had to schedule lunches in order to get in front of them. And so most doctors are obviously busy, and the way they get paid is when they're seeing their patients. So when they're being interrupted throughout the course of their day in the middle of seeing patients, because in order to leave samples for a doctor, you need a physician's signature. And so in order to get in front of that doctor for any amount of quality time, in order to actually have an in-depth discussion with that physician to find out why they choose to prescribe what they prescribe, and what their prescribing habits are, and what their feelings about the drug that you carry are. That's not something you can typically do when you have 30 seconds while they're signing your device. That's called an elevator pitch. You have to have a quick elevator pitch when you only have 30 seconds with that doctor. However, in order to get that quality time, you typically had to schedule a lunch with that doctor. And that holds true on the medical side of things as well, that you do a lot of lunches in order to get quality time with those physician offices. But the stereotype that went with pharmaceutical sales is that you were doing lunches every single day. And I recall back in, when I was in pharmaceutical sales going into clinics, and I'd bring in lunch, and, they would get upset that I brought in, let's say, Chili's that day, for example, and they'd say, oh, you know what, we had Chili's twice already this week. I mean, some offices used to advertise right in their job postings when they were looking for staff, lunch provided every day, because pharmaceutical companies have a budget, and they know that in order to get in front of the doctor and educate the doctor, that their reps are going to have to do these lunches. So that's where that stereotype of glorified caterer comes from. Is there some truth to that? Yeah, you actually need to do a fair bit of lunches with these physicians. And is it sometimes frustrating? And is it sometimes, are you being patronized by the physician? You know what, I use your drug all the time. Where do I sign? Or, yeah, thanks so much for coming in and serving my staff lunch. We love your drug. And typically you have some type of tracking data to have an idea of how much of your drug that they use. And so, I would say for me personally, that was one of the most frustrating things about pharmaceutical sales was the patronizing that took place. Norbert, love your drug, use it all the time, when I knew that they didn't. That, I was like number 5 on their list of drugs that they prescribed for, this particular, let's say, allergic rhinitis. And so the thing that you need to understand in your expectations in going into pharmaceutical sales is salaries are typically higher than they are on the medical side of things, but total compensation is typically not as high. There are a lot of benefits. Like I said, the sales quota pressure does not exist at the same level on the pharmaceutical side as it does the medical side. There is typically more company cars and benefits and perks and things like that that go with pharmaceutical sales. However, if you are somebody who is driven by competition and driven by high commission dollar paycheck, you probably want more of the medical device sales side of things. And can you start in pharmaceutical sales and leverage that into medical sales? You can. But what I'll tell you is because of these preconceived notions that many managers have on pharmaceutical sales, you probably don't want to spend too much time in pharmaceutical sales. Typically, most managers will tell you no more than 5 years tops. I would get career postings all the time, and it would say right in there, we don't want career pharmaceutical reps. So if you get in pharmaceutical sales and want to leverage that into medical device sales, you need to keep it at a pretty short period of time, ideally 2 years or so. The other thing is, people a lot of times think, well, I need to have a clinical sales background, or I need to have a science sales background. First and foremost, medical or pharmaceutical, most companies require that you have your bachelor's degree. So, unfortunately, none of us make the rules, and I don't know why they require a bachelor's degree, but most companies require a bachelor's degree, period. As far as like a science background, if you're looking to get directly into pharmaceutical sales, having a science background is probably a plus. However, most companies would prefer to see, whether pharmaceutical or medical, some type of outside selling experience, typically business to business sales experience prior to getting into either pharmaceutical or medical. And that actually takes away the need for you to have that life science degree, that bachelor in science and biology or chemistry or whatever. Is that potentially an added bonus? Yes, but all things being equal, is there a lot of weight placed on that? While most companies know, while some companies might actually put some emphasis on that, the majority do not. So let's talk about the difference then on the medical device side of things. So medical device side is, like I mentioned before, a lower base salary, typically, let's say, $50,000 to $60,000. However, the commission side of things is typically much higher. And if you really ultimately want to make, $200K plus, you pretty much have to get into medical device sales in order to make that kind of income. Now, are there some super specific rare orphan drugs that when you become an institutional hospital sales rep where you can make that kind of money? Yes. Are there some super specific oncology pharmaceuticals where you can make that kind of money? Yes. But statistically speaking, far less of those reps on the pharmaceutical side than there are on the medical device side. Can you make a really good living and have less stress, less pressure? Absolutely. But if you're driven by finances, if you're driven by commission check and you like the thrill of the sale, then the medical device side of things is probably the better route for you to go. And on the medical device side of things, the 4-year degree is also required typically. The bachelor's in science is typically not as required. A lot of medical device companies love that type A overachiever, and pharmaceutical companies like this as well, but they like that type A overachiever type of personality. They like that person who was in sports in college. They like that person who maybe was the president of their fraternity or president of club. The person who was an overachiever. There's a saying, the best predictor of future success is past success. So if you can demonstrate a past of accomplishments, that is something that you can use to ensure a good job interview and help you get that job, to give confidence in the hiring manager that, because you've been successful in your past, most likely you're going to be successful in your future. And so with medical device sales, there are a number of opportunities to go into in medical. I personally, as a recruiter, would break them down into 3 different categories. There was a disposable side of things. There was a capital side of things, and then there's a surgical side of things. And so, is one better than another? I mean, I recently heard a gentleman talk about he has multiple fancy collector's cars, and he was asked, which car do you like better? And his response was, the one I'm in that day. So, is your capital sales job better than your surgical sales job? They both can be good. It depends on which one you're in at that time and what your personality is geared for. And so with disposable type medical device, typically the income is less on that side of things than it is the surgical or capital side of things. But there are some of those positions as well that you can make a very good living at. So basically, both careers can be potentially very fulfilling and rewarding, and it's really just a matter of what your personality is, what you're geared towards, and what you really ultimately want out of life. And if you are looking for the opportunity to make the greatest amount of money, you have to understand that comes with sacrifice, that comes with pain and heartache. There's a saying, nothing in life comes for free, right? So don't think that, heck, why wouldn't I choose medical device over pharmaceutical? Because I can make $250,000 here and I might only make 120 or 150 over here. Well, understand that comes at a price. You are going to work longer hours, you are going to work harder hours, you're going to have more sales pressure on you in order to achieve that type of income. So go into that with an open mind and understand the differences about each profession. And like I started this off saying, both of them are noble careers, and both of them are honorable professions. You just have to decide what it is that you're looking for in your life at that time. And if you decide, like I said, to get into medical device, that's your ultimate career, and you want to start in pharmaceutical sales, just make sure that you don't spend too much time in pharma, because traditionally speaking, most managers have a preconceived notion about somebody who becomes a lifer and gets accustomed to that very large salary and that, we'll call it a cushy lifestyle that pharmaceutical sales can provide.